Hello, I'm John. Welcome to Adventures in Miniature, and this is my teeny tiny hobby room. Today we're going to be doing the Emperor's Pin-Up, the Order of Our Martyred Lady. Let's go! So I'm actually going to start with my base this time. I'm using super glue to stick down some cork flooring that I got from a friend. Once that's dry, I can rip bits off until I've got a shape that I like. I lay down some PVA and use some mixed flocking to give it some texture. I wanted to put a corpse on the base, so I dug into my skeleton bits and pulled out enough parts to make the top half of a body. Then, using gel superglue, I'm going to set the body out to the side of where the main model's going to be. I deliberately left a piece of lower ground here so that the torso didn't stick up too much and fight for attention with the actual model. While that dries, I can move on to the main model, which I've already primed black. I've grown fond of starting off my reds from a base of rhinox hide, which I'm going to put on quite loosely over the robes. There's not much need to be delicate here, as I'm going to be doing cleanup anyway. I'm also going to use this as a base for any parts of the model that will be leather, like the gloves or the corset. Next, I'm going to do the inside of the habit with Barrack Nar Burgundy, which is a pain to say, but it's a lovely deep purple. While that dries, it gives me time to do the armor, which I'm going to use Corvus Black for. I've been moving away from true blacks and more towards a blue-black look for this sort of thing. With that done, I'm going to mix some of the burgundy with Wraithbone to create a highlight color for the robes. I wanted to get this all done in one go, so it would be reasonably consistent. Just a little bit on the edges and the raised areas. For the most part, this is going to be hidden away with weathering anyway, so I'm not going to lose sleep if it isn't perfect. We can set that aside to dry and go back to the base. I've primed it black, and now I'm going to use rhinox hide to fill in the areas that might be dirt or mud. I've picked out the skeleton with some Xandri dust, and I'm going to highlight that up later. Next, I'm going to glue the legs onto the torso so I can mount the whole thing onto the base. Speaking of which, back to the base. I'm going to put down some Thondia Brown to add a little bit more texture to the ground. Then I'm highlighting the skeleton with Ushapti Bone. I'm planning to cover the base with snow later, so there isn't much need to go any further than this. Before I finish up with the base for now, I went over it with a dry brushing of grey. First Mechanicus Standard Grey and then Grey Seer, mostly to get the rocks. Moving back to the robes with Corn Red to start with, I still left a few of the areas brown in the deepest recesses. Because of the cork, I'll need to drill a hole through the base and pin the model into place, which is great as now it will be a lot more secure and stable. Once the model is securely in place, I put on a small tuft of burnt grass to create some visual interest near the skeleton and hide the fact that he has a missing arm. I made a glaze out of the corn red to try and tie it all together with the brown. I'm still experimenting with the opacity of the glaze at the moment, but each model is a chance to improve my understanding of the process. The glaze is going to take a while to dry, so I'm going to keep myself busy by tackling the white areas on the armor. I'm using Grey Seer as a base, which will pretty much bring me up to a white on its own. And then I'm going to come back and highlight that later. Now that my glaze has dried, I can start bringing up the red to create more contrast. I'm doing this with Mephiston Red, which I'm going to put on the raised areas of the fabric to ease the transition into my highlight color. I like to use the drying time for one color to focus on other areas so that I don't feel like I'm just sitting literally watching paint dry. I'm going to try and lighten up the black armor a little with a light stippling of Dark Reaper. I think of it as a poor man's highlight that I like to use on larger areas. I find it's a quick and easy way to create some more depth in the model. After a quick pass over the shoulder pads, I think the model's starting to come together quite nicely. I'm about to get into all those little details on the armor that I find very satisfying to do. They're by no means essential, but there's so many beautiful details on these sculpts that it seems a shame not to do them, even though some of that detail is going to be hidden by a big old rocket gun. I'd actually love to see more sisters sculpts with more open poses to show off the level of detail that went into this kit. I'm going to move on to some edge highlighting now, using Thunderhawk blue around the edges of the black armor. You don't have to worry about getting every line, but I like to pick out the most prominent edges. It's another one of those processes that takes a bit of time, but it's quite satisfying as well. It's finally time to get some of the metallic details filled in. This is another one where you can feel the progress of the model coming along. I'm using Lead Belcher for this, which is my favorite metallic base color. To me, it's got just the right shade between light and dark, which you can highlight up from. On the box art, the Inquisition symbol is left white, but I prefer to pick this out with gold. So I'm going to go ahead and base that ready for the gold. Right, for the corset, I decided to try a new color for the leather. I recently got some scale color orange leather, which I was hoping would give me a nice tone to brighten up the model a bit. It's a lot thicker than I was expecting, and dries with a noticeably more matte finish. Initially I was worried about it, but I'm going to see if I can bring it closer to the rest of the model. Once the corset's had a chance to dry, I can come back and get the Inquisition symbol and the studs on the leather. Time to do what I can only describe as the Bouzon Halter. It's another satisfying detail that you don't have to do, but I like how it looks when it's done. While I've got the Lead Belcher out, I'm going to get the little studs on the shoulders. And of course, the studs on the robe. I'm quickly going to do the leather pouch on the belt. I try to use different browns to help all the little details stand out a bit, but it's important to remember that not everything has to be its own special color. Let's go back to the arms, and this time I'm going to be putting some Lead Belcher on the barrel and the mechanical details of the bolter. Having committed to the orange leather, I need to do the gloves. When it's mixed with a bit of Lamian medium, it behaves a lot better. A little Lead Belcher for the studs again. For the bolter, I like to paint these with Dark Reaper, as I think it helps to stand out against the black just a little bit. With the orange brown, I wasn't entirely sure how to highlight it. I decided to use some Carrick Stone, which went reasonably well. It helped add a feeling of wear to the leather without having to get too detailed. I would love to try and develop my skills in painting leather, as I see so many posts on Instagram that just blow me away, so I guess I should practice. Time to get the arms glued in. This can be a bit fiddly on sisters models, and sometimes they don't fit perfectly. In retrospect, I could have gone in with some green stuff to fill the gap, but I've yet to find my tube from Green Stuff World, so I guess I'll have to do this next time. It's a small defect that I noticed because I know I didn't do it, but overall I can live with it. I go through the armor steps quickly for the backpack and the helmet before I set them aside to go through the white details on the armor. For eye lenses, I'm using dark brown as a base. I'm going to brighten that up with a bit of Mephiston red in the center and a teeny tiny dot of orange for a highlight that no one will ever see. While I've got the orange mix though, I'm going to use it to highlight the topmost folds of the robe and along the edges of the fabric. Again, I want to get the stage done in one go so I can have a consistent colour for the whole highlight. Although I did blast over this later with a bunch of dirt, so perhaps it wasn't entirely necessary. Some Evil Sun Scarlet for the blinky light on the backpack and the targeting sensor. Boop. Oh, cat. Then the gold details, which I've got to use Pro Acryl Rich Gold for, as this is the nicest gold I've found so far. George, get out of that! What are you doing? More blinky lights, this time in green. I'm starting with a base of Caliban green and then going over it with Warpstone Glow and then Moot Green for the highlight. Now there's something about doing faces that's really intimidating, but it would be a bigger shame to waste all those lovely sculpts. And frankly, the only way to improve is to practice. After all, if you don't try, you guarantee failure. So this way, I can at least learn something even if it comes out a bit wonky. In between layers, I'm going to take some time to put some scratches into the armor and give the white details a bit more cleanup. I also took this opportunity to mount the helmet onto a belt. I saw this done in the recent graphic novel, and I thought it made a lot more sense than just not having a helmet, so I'm going to try and do this on all the sisters where it makes sense. For the skin, I used Bugman's Glow as a base, followed by Cadian Flesh with a highlight of Flayed One Flesh. There was a lot of fl sounds. I found that using a lighter flesh tone helps the face stand out a bit more against the armor. Dab dab, on goes the head. Then a little bit of cleanup on the hair. It's mostly little details now. A quick pass on the grenade, and a little brown to mute down the scratches on the armor. I always see really amazing paint chipping on Instagram, but I can't quite get it yet. One day. Now, a tiny bit of Nuln oil on the bolter and the pipes to enhance the contrast a bit. I did a quick bit of dry brush weathering before it's onto the base. I've been saving the snow on the base for last so I could get to all the little details before I put it on. I wanted to use snow for this one, and my initial plan was to brush on some PVA and sprinkle on some snow. That didn't quite go how I wanted, so it's time to change tack. I mixed up some snow flock with Mod Podge to make a texture paste. Using a sculpting tool, I'm going to layer it onto the base quite thick before nudging it into place. Before it had a chance to dry, I used a wet paintbrush to clean up the areas where snow had gathered that I wanted to be clean. With that, I think I'm done. So I've done a few squads of Our Martyred Lady minis before, so this was quite familiar. I did try a few new ideas, but I think it's a fairly easy colour scheme to figure out as you go. Red and black will always go together. I was a little bit worried about the orange leather for the gloves and the corset, but it has grown on me. I feel like I could have been a little bit bolder with the contrast on the robes, but overall I'm happy. Right, so that's us done. Thank you for watching. I hope you got something out of the video. Please feel free to like, comment and subscribe. You can check out my previous videos where I did Order of the Bloody Rose. Hopefully I'll see you on the next one.